Two, one. Hello, Culture Matters. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest today. Before I do that, here is a quote just for this episode. Everything that I've ever done, the through line has been not luck, but actively pursuing people who can give me sound insights and then going and actually following those insights. Tim Calise, our guest today, is an advisor, a mentor, a coach to founders and CEOs that are succeeding but want to get to that next level. They have raised hundreds of millions of dollars via the hedge fund world. They had a snacks.com apparently, which sounded like a really ingenuity, a lot of ingenuity there and foresight. They actually were an advisor and a teammate, a team player with this internet sensation, jacked out of his mind, smart guy called Alex Armozy, helped build, I believe, a software company there, and today work with founders and CEOs. So if you listen to the Culture Matters podcast, pay very close attention. There's going to be a higher level conversation. Tim Calise, thanks for coming on the show today. I'm excited. I
Jay,
was doing push-ups before this.
well, I appreciate you having me, Jay. Thank you for the kind intro and looking forward to the conversation.
I'd like to start with some of the myths or misnomers around founder that
Hmm.
you've observed being around so many of these interesting creatures, people over the
Yeah,
years. Some of the myths or misnomers that you think would help our entrepreneurs listening.
yeah. So I actually started a company after my hedge fund experience in the financial industry, kind of financial space with a partner. Um, and I was young, Jay, at the time. Like I didn't know what I didn't know. I was in that kind of unconscious lack of competence, if you will. And I thought starting a business was having an idea, getting a business card, buying the domain, and like, I'm a founder. I founded something. And as my kind of experiences kind of stacked over the last 10 plus years, you know, ideas are cheap. Everybody kind of hears that. Uh, I think the idea of being a founder, there's a couple of pieces to it. I see them founders fall into three buckets. There are those that kind of replicate and innovate. So, what already exists, but make it a little bit better. There are those that are simply trying to compete for market share. Like right now, you could throw any company name and add AI to the end, and you're competing for kind of the mind share around that theme, right? And then you have the true kind of revolutionaries. And I think it's really important to know what you're doing or what you're intending to do, because especially the first time around, I have yet to find anyone. There are very few examples of people who start one business and are massively successful. So if you are a founder, you should be thinking, how do I learn from this first experience or second experience? How do I not take myself out of the game? And how do I figure out a way to evolve and innovate so that I can stay in long enough to actually find the idea that works? And I think there's
Mm.
so much to longevity and iteration rather than just throw all the chips on the table and call yourself a founder because you can buy a domain name.
Replicate, innovate, compete market share. Like I hear
Yeah.
unspoken bandwagon almost, and then revolutionary. Can we start
Yeah.
with revolutionary? What are some elements of that revolutionary essence that maybe
Yeah.
some of our listeners aren't even realize that they are the future Napoleon of
Yeah.
their.
Yeah. I think so. Let's use like two very different examples, right? Everybody loves Elon Musk primarily from a business perspective. Amazing thinker, innovator, etc. So he's saying, I'm willing to bet probably in the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars ultimately that we need to be on Mars. Nobody's ever done it before. We think that it's possible, or even electric cars. We'll take Tesla, probably a better example. Everybody agreed that cars were a good idea in the beginning, but nobody had figured out electric cars in any way that was commercial, able to be commercialized. So he was ahead of the market. So you have an idea, you have a product, and you have the market. Elon, because of the way he thinks and now his financial capability, he can be quote unquote early or spend the money to create the market. And I think founders, entrepreneurs think they have to be that revolutionary in order to figure out an idea that's going to be worth their time.
Mm,
That's Elon is like ahead of so he is going ahead of where the market is and already kind of placing his bets generally years into the future, decades into the future. And he can wait because he has the money to do it and he has the ability to raise money to do it. On the other side, you have a guy like when Steve Jobs came out with the iPhone, he didn't create phones. He didn't create MP3 players. He didn't create the personal planner. He didn't create a calendar. He didn't actually create anything. He just took a bunch of things that were all disconnected and put it together in a beautiful wrapper. He
mm,
didn't need to stand up on stage and say, do you want the ability to have music in your pocket? Do you want the ability to communicate outside of your house? Do you want the ability to write a note on the fly? He didn't have to sell you on the idea. He sold you on the solution, but the market was already there. And I think too often, first time entrepreneurs, first time founders try to go too far ahead of the market or into a space where the market isn't there yet. And that's why it just takes more time and more money than they're used to, and then they'll fail. I own a fitness business right now that I bought about 7 years ago. Um, it's been in existence for almost 20 years. It was in the digital fitness space, founded in basically 2005, 2006. And this is before Peloton, before Fitbit, et cetera, et cetera. People weren't at the point to understand digital fitness at that time. So they were about 5 to 8 years too early. Now, if I say, hey, a digital gym, you go Peloton or Tonal or something like that, all of these concepts that already exist. I don't have to sell you on the idea of digitizing and tracking your fitness. 20 years ago, I absolutely had to do that. So I'd have to be like, Jay, it's going to matter to you at some point to know how efficient your workouts are. It's a super expensive initiative. So my recommendation is if this is the first time you're doing it, innovate, don't revolutionize. Take
mm.
something, make it incrementally better, do it faster, do it cheaper, do it with a better experience, just like Steve Jobs did, rather than trying to revolutionize and meet the market ahead of where it is right now.
Do you think there's any relationship between uh, behavioral patterns or character attributes
Yep.
and increasing or decreasing likelihood of revolutionary concepts?
Yeah, I think it how much of an ego you have. If I said to you, Jay, you can make $10 million on this idea, but when you go to a cocktail party or you hang out with friends, you're not going to be the guy who's like, Jay's revolutionizing the world. It's like if I said, Jay, you're making paper clips, but you can make boat tons of money doing it. There's a piece of many of us which would say, no, I want the flashy thing. I want to be able to go to my circle and say, I built an electric car. Sounds great, but there's a lot of money being made. I mean, I think this is why even things like you're seeing the pendulum swing back to the trades again. You know, I know a lot of plumbers and electricians that are making tons of money and living great lives. It's not, quote unquote sexy, but it's cash flow. I also know a lot of people who are trying to be really innovative and flashy, and they're losing money left and right. So
Mm.
you have to choose what, kind of who you are. Absolutely, in my opinion. Um, I am seeing more and more the younger the entrepreneur is, the more flashy, the bigger the gap. As you start to see entrepreneur, I'm in my 40s now, more of the people that I traffic with right now, they try to hit singles. They're not trying to hit home runs. And the wealthiest people I know are trying to hit singles and doubles.
How would you, for our audience,
Yeah.
distinguish between single
Yep.
versus double or triple?
Yeah. A home run is I'm going to bet it all. I'm going to make if this works, I only need, 0.1% of the market and I'll make $1 trillion. That's a home run idea. I'm going to create a new version of Google or something like that. I'm going to make an electric car. I'm going to go to Mars. These big ideas. Um, a single or a double would be I can create a community or I can create a course or I can make a product that I already know will sell. I can do it relatively inexpensively. Most importantly, in my opinion, is I know how to market and get access to those people. I think that's a huge uh, factor that people don't appreciate. How clearly and easily you can access the attention of your market matters a lot. And if you've ever started a business before and you're like, I can't figure out how to actually, like, I know what the demographic is, but that demographic option isn't on Facebook or LinkedIn or anything like that. Like, how the heck do I get like, how do I get in front of those people? It's a big challenge. Whereas if I said, I just want, men between 40 and 45 who live in a geographic area, that's super easy. Amazing. The cleaner and easier you can get in front of folks, in my opinion, the less risk you're taking.
When you were carting around I love this, your suitcase to
Yeah.
school, were you envisioning that you'd be on Wall Street someday or, uh, you know, uh,
Yeah.
a consigliere to founders and CEOs, or was there a different path?
Yeah. So in middle school, the I took a briefcase to school because it was what my father was in professional services as well, and so he got on a train in the morning and wore the suit, the whole nine yards. And as many sons do, they emulate what they see, and they idolize and the parental figures in their lives, right? So that was all I knew. Uh, and I think in the beginning, I said I want to be like my dad, which is a very common phrasing, but I've learned over time that my wiring is different. And so I knew what I wanted to do was to do something in the kind of business category in general. I always like numbers, I like math, I like investing, things like that from a very early age. And so at that time in middle school, yes, I probably would have said I would be an investment banker or something like that. Once I got to kind of college age, I realized that I was cut differently, cut from a different cloth. My wiring was different. And that's where I had entrepreneurial kind of seeding earlier in my life. But that's when it really started to kind of take hold. And I knew that I wasn't destined to be kind of a small cog in a very big wheel. I had much more of a empathetic, kind of creative side to me, which wouldn't have been a fit for for a large bank.
What? Yeah, that was funny because Mike, I wanted to ask where does creativity fit in the value ladder of the entrepreneur as they build an enterprise? Because if I did my due diligence correctly, you're helping founders go from that half a million to 3 million plus, you
Yeah,
know. So my question is what value does the creativity have in that value ladder? Being able to think
uh,
outside the box and be
yeah.
very loose.
I view business as a game as much as anything. So there are, very simply, think of it as an effort to an effort to find the truth with a capital T. And I'll define what that means. Earlier in my career, I thought that if I came up with an idea, I could come up with a product, and then I would go and find the people who would be a good fit to buy the product. That's a product first approach. As I've kind of evolved over the last decade plus, I now start the other way around, which is I find the market, which means you identify a problem and then you work backwards. And you can kind of file this under the idea of, the best thing to have is a ravenous crowd, a hungry crowd. That's what you want. You want to be able to solve high pains that already exist, in my opinion, because that's where the money is to be made with the lowest amount of risk. So, because you're not guessing whether there's a market. If you watch Shark Tank, one out of every five ideas that come onto Shark Tank is a terrible idea. And they're like, I had this problem. So I created the product. I put $500,000 of my money into it and nobody's buying it. It's like, it's a dog. Well, so how do you avoid creating a product or a service or a company that doesn't have a market. You just flip it on its head. You go to the market first and say, if I created this product, is that something that would be of interest to you? And if you get enough yeses, then you have validated that there's demand, because we are the control of supply. So getting back to your initial question, how much does creativity play into this? You need to be creative enough. There's a term out there called product market fit. Product market fit is simply, as the name implies, the effort to take a market and a product and have them match. Does the product solve the problem of the market? If you already have the market, then by definition, the only variable is the product. So how creatively can you be? What creative sense do you need in order to figure out what product you need to create to match the market? That's where my creativity comes in. I am not artistic in any way, but I am very good at figuring out what a market needs and how to actually conceptualize that into a business. And that's where I've spent literally the last decade.
So in a sense, I want to make sure I follow you. If the inclination of the founder is to pursue the solution to the problem, the product first, you're bringing your experience and wisdom and outside the box, their bird's eye view. How can we make this more market fit, efficient?
I'll,
And that's
yeah,
the symbiotic relationship between
yeah.
that
I'll give
human
you
being and
a really tangible example. I just did a keynote to a real estate group literally less than a week ago, and I finished up my keynote and we went to Q&A. And one of the agents said, "I'm really struggling with my market. I don't stand out. I sell in this geographic area." And I said, "Okay, so who do you cater to?" And he said, "Generally, my clients are between, kind of 50 and 70." I said, "Okay, amazing. Um, what, why do they work with you? Like, what are the things that they think about?" And he's like, "Well, I'm downsizing them. I'm moving them to smaller home, things like that." And I said, "Okay, so what business are you in?" He's like, "I'm in the real estate business." And I said, "That's where you're losing them. You're not in the real estate business. You are in the life cycle. You're the business you're actually in is helping people move from one chapter of their life to the next with no friction at all." He's like, "What the heck did you just say?" And I said, "You're dealing with people who have lived in a house, made it a home for 30 years. So think about it this way. What are their fears and frustrations? Well, they're really worried about, am I ever going to have a home that feels like this again? This is where my kids grew up. God, the process of moving, I haven't done it in decades. I just don't want to go through the process. What if somebody breaks my thing?" I was like, those are the things that if you solve for all of that, and you just say, "Listen, I specialize in helping folks that are looking to downsize, but keep the soul of their home." And we make it absolutely frictionless because I have movers, I have landscapers, we just do everything. We're a full suite of service. He's like, "That's amazing." I was like, exactly. You need to figure out, not I'm a real estate agent. It's what is the value you're actually bringing to the marketplace? And I think that's where most of us get stuck. It's like, you know, so many people are like, it's the outcome, not the product or not the system. People want to know the solution, not the mechanics. It's like sell features, not benefits, or sell benefits, not features. That idea.
what do you think about what we're doing? Like we've just met,
Yep.
uh, we're on this show. People may or may not be listening at varying degrees of intention or attention. And like I'm curious, philosophically, or what exactly are we doing? Us hosts, guests.
Yeah.
What is the what's why are we doing it? What are we doing? What's the value in it? What does it tell us about consumer? The reason I'm asking this, I'm thinking about that professor who gave you guys the condoms for the snack, and you're in that class, and like something about the condoms. I should probably tell the story, or else it's going to really be lost in the audience.
I was going to
But
say we're going out
so
of left field. Yeah.
welcome
No,
to the Culture
welcome
Matters
back.
podcast. Yeah, it's like my head. But like something in that gift spoke to that audience of college students to pay attention to the snacks.
Yeah.
In the spirit of that, which, yeah, please tell the story after your initial response. What are we doing with these podcasts? I'm doing a lot of this podcasting. And I see you are too, because I was doing due diligence to do a good job here. So,
Yeah.
yeah, what are we doing?
We are paying down the ignorance tax. And what I mean by that is we have we don't know what we don't know, and just as individuals. And I believe that the most transformative dynamic that exists in the market today is simply the idea is context and perspective. We are social beings at our core. I'll give you an example. I am a terrible solopreneur because I think out loud. I get the best out of me when I am able to collaborate with other people. So I have what's called my co-creator community. It's people who believe in the same thing. Because you'll say something. You'll say, hey Tim, I have an idea. And I'll say, oh, Jay, what I heard you say was this, this, and this. What about this other thing? You're like, I never even thought of that. You could have gone and executed and gone and built a product. And without that perspective, the outside influence, the outside feedback, it's not going to be the best product it can be. It's just, in my opinion, is impossible for one individual in a silo, in a vacuum, to come up with the optimized solution to anything. Because everything you think is a reflection of who you are, how you think, your experiences, your biases, et cetera, right? But if I put you in a room with 20 other entrepreneurs and this is why pitch competitions are great. I have an idea, here's what I think. And you're going to get 20 people to say, well, did you think about this? Or what about this? Or what about that? Or I've already seen a product like that. Like that's hugely valuable. And I think more so now than ever, I see entrepreneurs going one of two ways. They're either their egos are getting in their way, which means they actually don't uh, they don't objectively go and seek out other opinions because they're worried about having their feelings hurt, or there are those that are just rushing to what I said, kind of the truth with a capital T, which is I don't care if my idea is good or bad. I just want to know if it's right. And I don't care if it's your idea or my idea or somebody else's influence or a book I read. Like I just want the answer because I have no ego about it. Me of 20 years ago would not have said the same thing. I would have said, I think I have to be the smartest guy in the room. And I actually am not going to go into rooms where I'm not the smartest guy because it hurts my ego. Now I'm the exact opposite. I'm like, I want to run into the smartest room that I can be, and I'll just be a fly on the wall if I could get there. Right. So what are we doing here? I think we're paying into the universe the idea that information is cheap, insights are of utmost value. And the difference between the two is context. Like if you're listening to this, you selected you're listening to this podcast for a reason, which means you were called to listen to whatever this message is. And because you self-selected, hopefully something that we've talked about so far will give you a little bit of value in whatever it is that you're doing. If either you've started and you need to course correct, or you're already, you haven't started at all, hopefully this will save you some pain and effort, pain and sacrifice along the way. So I believe that I've been called to try to package as much of my blood, sweat, and tears, the learnings from those as much as possible. And so I actively seek out, opportunities to do that.
You mentioned this uh, being the smartest or not seeking opinions. Was that an experience or a revelation or a mentor advisory? What led to that? Because I think that will be helpful for our audience that are
Yeah.
the founders and beginners listening.
Yeah. So if you believe that, think of it almost like a bridge, right? You're standing on one side of a canyon, you're trying to get to the other. You need to build a bridge between the two. If you've never built a bridge before, you're going to use your best thought of like, hey, this is how I think I'm going to build a bridge. Do you think you'd be better off talking to five other bridge builders before you started construction? I think most of
Oh
us
yeah.
would say yes. Yes. Okay. Then you should go like, how many people start a business and don't talk to other people who have done something very similar? If you're not actively seeking out perspective, there's the great saying, which is you can't read the label from inside the bottle. And a mentor of mine who has
Mm.
been absolutely one of the most transformative people in my life in the last couple of years says transformations don't happen in isolation. So if you believe that if you are open enough to hear somebody else's perspective and honestly take it and do something with it, then you should be trying to figure out how many people can I get around, because it will only improve the quality of your work and who you are. And that last piece is probably the most important. I subscribed so much to the people that win in business are the ones who are like gladiators. If you can withstand the most pressure, the most pain, like those are the people that win. And I just don't believe that anymore. Um, I believe that it's the person who knows who they are and plays to their strengths to the greatest extent possible. And so it's so much more psychological, beliefs driven. And everybody
Some
hears about
deep
these
insight.
ideas of like, do you have a scarcity mindset or an abundant mindset? If you believe that ideas are everywhere and that opportunities are effectively infinite, then the question is not, can I come up with an idea? The question you have to ask yourself is, how do I sort through ideas? Like that age old thing. If you're a hammer, then everything looks like a nail, right? So for me, I have hired a coach whose sole job is to keep me in my lane, to to remind me and clarify what my zone of genius is. And every time, and I committed to her that I have said, anytime I do something, before I do it, I'm going to talk to you because I want you to remind me whether I'm on track or not. Because I'm really good at selling myself. I'm also really good at telling myself, like I get a kick out of solving really thorny problems, but I don't have an ego anymore. I don't need to prove to someone how smart I am anymore. I need to actually dial back and say, if I can spend 100% of my time doing things that feed me and deliver value to the marketplace, I will never have another worry in the world. So my only job is to maintain that clarity. And I think more people would be better off if they were just really clear about what makes them, what gives them energy, what they're really good at, and say no to everything else.
As a strategic partner to our listeners that are
Yeah.
self-aware enough and bullish enough to bring in advisory,
Yeah.
what's the value of you having your own? In the like, I'm thinking the antithesis of that. If you had none,
Yeah.
can you explore that a little bit? Why have that advisor yourself?
Um,
What's the value of that?
well, every person that I work with has mentors. Every person that I hold in high regard. I mean, one of my mentors runs a $1.2 million a year revenue business. He has multiple mentors that he talks to about certain things. The fallacy of there is like an end zone where like I've made it, I no longer need anything is absolute BS. It's actually quite the opposite. The people that you idolize are the ones who have simply done this work and have reaped the benefits of it.
Hmm.
So again, I work with the reason why I've chosen the kind of sub $3 million a year revenue business is because I have wiring inside of me that is so attached to that founder owner who had an idea, whose families depend on them, who are feeling like they're burning the candle at both ends, and taking 3 steps forward and 2.5 steps back every day, and they are about to give up. Like, most businesses are really good ideas. They're just executed poorly because they don't understand how the market actually works. So if I can align pricing, positioning, and product, those are the 3 things that I work on, and in doing so, prove to you that you can do this, I just think that I can stack the deck in our favor. And it just the proof is in the pudding. I mean, I've, you know, Gym Launch, which you mentioned earlier, which folks know Alex Ramosi. I came in the mid part of that story, but that company exited for just south of a 9-digit number. Again, the folks that I traffic with right now are all looking to kind of double, triple, quadruple the size of their business, and it's not a revenue goal; it's an income goal. Because I have a background in investing, I know how to reverse engineer an 8-figure exit. And that is what most founder entrepreneurs want. They just want to sell a business. No, most of us don't actually want to be billionaires. If you want to be a billionaire, then you have to, by definition, have a lack of imbalance, have an imbalance in your life. It is almost by definition, unless you inherit it. If you create $1 billion business, something has to give. And I will tell 99.9% of people out there, it is a BS goal. It sounds good, but you are not ready, willing, and able to do the
It's
thing
real.
to actually do it. So just figure out what the heck you actually want, because I think you'll be a heck of a lot better off. So stop listening to all the people that say you have to grind, you have to work 27 hours a day. You will not like the journey, and you will lose everything that actually matters to you in the meantime. But you can have the financial freedom that you want. You can have the time freedom you want. And most importantly, you can actually have the mental freedom that you actually want if you know how to get there. And I have the blueprint to do it. And that is why people seek me out.
In your observations, what do you what do you see most commonly that sub 3 million entrepreneurs want that they don't know they want?
I think they know what they want. They just don't think it's attainable. And I only know that because I was there. I, I'm, as I've been pretty transparent with you, Jay. I mean, there was a time in my life where I believed that because I had kids that I couldn't be a successful entrepreneur. That thought crossed my mind. And that is just emblematic of a lack of belief in myself and a lack of understanding of actually how to get to where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And it's really easy, but it's if you don't know Dan Martell,
Oh yeah.
Dan
Great book.
Martell, wrote great book, Buy Back Your Time. Dan is really, really pointed on this, and I could not agree with anybody more about how to structure your life. He says it's not a because of, it's you should do it. Like, not I can't do something because I have kids. It is you should do it because you have kids.
Yeah.
It should be fuel, not an impediment. And I think we lie to ourselves a lot. And so a lot of it is just psychology. It really is, but I spent over 10 years in the fitness industry. Fitness is just as much psychology as it is tactics, but you won't believe that the tactics matter until you can actually see results. And so that's what we do.
When I was preparing, there was a scenario where Alex called you for feedback.
Yeah.
So from an advisory standpoint, what advice do you have to the upcoming advisors and leaders, mentors, consultants on telling the truth, on putting the client first? Because in that scenario, you could have kind of shrunk back and not shared what you thought. I thought that was really powerful.
Yeah.
Um,
So the story is I had a chance to meet Alex and Layla earlier in the year, I believe it was 2019, 2018. And then I got a call from Alex a couple of months later. He asked me my opinion on something. And my response was, do you want me to tell you what I think, or do you want me to tell you that you're right? And that was the beginning of a very transparent relationship at that point. I mean, I greatly appreciate, like, the name of this podcast
oh,
is
go
around
ahead.
culture, right? So what the heck, like, culture for me is how is aligned around belief systems You can talk about core tenets, you can talk about mission statements and all of these types of things, but ultimately it's what matters to us. What are our North Stars? What are the things that we agree? As I said, business is a game. What are the rules of the game? I believe, and I'm a big follower of a guy named Ray Dalio. A lot of people know him. He runs Bridgewater Associates, which is like basically the number one investment company or top five of the last decade, last century. Super smart guy. And they talk about how they just pursue truth. Doesn't matter where it comes from. You can be a junior analyst and you can go head to head with a partner in the business if you believe you're right and you have a reason to believe what you believe with data, and you can back it up with data. So take that experience between Alex and I. Culturally, are we in a culture of shrinking back when we avoid a hard conversation? Is our culture to pursue truth no matter where it is? Is our culture to be, uh, you know, open to ideas that are not consistent with our own and actually considering them? Like, what do we stand for? And if this resonates with you, I actually published 2 years ago now what I call my intentions. It's not sexy. It's a 4-page Google document, and it says, here's where I came from, here's where I am, here's where I'm going, here's what I believe, here's what I will tolerate, and here's what I will not tolerate. So if you want to work with me, if you want to be in my ecosystem, if we don't align on those things, then I love you, but we're not going to be able to work together because I'm not changing and I don't expect you to change to work with me. But if you believe the same things I do, it will go not be a negative. It will actually be a tremendous asset between us because you'll know exactly who I am and how I think. And you'll know why I do what I do and why I'm motivated the way that I am. And I will give you everything in my power to make sure you're successful. And you want me to have those intentions because it keeps everybody else, all the noise, away from me.
Hmm.
So I just believe in a purity of alignment because that is where the best stuff happens. There are no
What are
gray
some,
areas. We're either going to align or we're not, and that's cool with me. And it's not
yeah.
not a negative to me or a negative to you. It's like puzzle pieces. If our pieces don't fit together, that's cool. But there's somebody else out there probably that's a better fit for you than I am.
What elements of culture have you seen really go beyond that feeling like, oh, this feels right or this doesn't? If you were
Yeah,
to deconstruct or
yeah,
take apart, because you like to take things Legos, right? Take them apart and put it back
yeah,
together. If we're doing
yeah,
that from a culture perspective, because you've been a part of a lot of great ones,
yeah,
is my assumption.
yeah. I mean, I'll give you. I actually have I have a Yeti that I use all the time, which actually had our beliefs at gym launch on them. But like, I'll give you a couple of them just to articulate the idea. So one of our core tenets was speed is king. Okay. So how does that manifest itself? Um, if something, how often we sit in a meeting or have a conversation, it's like, okay, so hey Jay, it's Tuesday. Um, we've got this like 2 hour project that would actually move the business forward. When do you think you can get it done by? Most people will be like, well, how about Friday? At gym launch, the answer would have been, it's Tuesday at 9 o'clock. It's a 2 hour project. How about the end of the day? And you're like, well, how am I expected to do that? Okay, tell me what else is on your docket for today. Is it more important than the thing we just talked about? If it's not, move the other thing and put this in its place. It should be done by the end of the day. If we agree, it's the thing that we should be working on. Speed does matter. And here's why. Uh, if you haven't ever looked up the 50 pounds of clay story, I'll give you the brief version, but you can absolutely look it up. There was a study that was done. They went into a school and a class of kids in our class were divided in half. Each of them were given 50 pounds of clay to work with. One group was you have the entire semester or trimester to make the perfect pot. You get one thing to work on, make it perfect. That was half the class. The other half was told, I want you to make the highest quantity that you possibly can throughout this semester. The one is for perfection, the
Mm.
other is for volume. It's not by chance that the quote unquote best piece that came out of that class came from the quantity side. Because you learn and you evolve and you iterate through reps. There is no such thing as a perfect one time. It just doesn't exist. It's the same reason why entrepreneurs will sit and tinker. And I did this, so I can tell you from firsthand experience. If I
Mm.
just get the business model right, the business will be successful. If I just tweak this ad copy just enough that it feels right to me, it'll work. It's a volume game, not a one, hit it once and that's that. You won't bat 1,000. So why does that matter? Why does speed matter? Because we need iteration. We need to try the number of times. We need to implement as many things as we can to find out what's working. That's as an
If it's
example.
any consolation, I saw your videos a couple because you were putting a lot of reps. And I was
Yep.
like, oh, I would love to have this guy on the podcast. In my due diligence, I found out, oh shit, he helped Alex.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to be said of that. You putting out a lot, and obviously that gentleman's ubiquitous, based
Yeah.
on the same premise, repetition,
Yeah.
output,
Yeah.
volume.
Yeah.
That's a profound. Um, how about from the standpoint of there's a for our listeners that um, have been contemplating selling their company,
Mm. Yep.
are there uh, things you can share with them that could help them realize that maybe that is not the route to go in, if any at all?
Yeah. Um, so this is probably going to be a bit of a contentious topic because my thoughts on this are different than many. So I'll start with the headline. 90% of businesses will never sell. Another 5% of them will sell, but you will be underwhelmed. And somewhere in the 3 to 5% will actually be the thing that you're envisioning. So you have a 1 in 20 chance of actually doing the thing and getting the thing that you want. So the question you would ask yourself is, how do I become the 5%? So this is something I work with a lot of people on because I've raised $350 million in my day and sold companies and built companies to sell and things like that. There is a formula to do it. There are very basically, you just think of it as what are the risks that the buyer is going to take in buying your company. So let's just take Gym Launch, for example, which has since been sold. Alex was in every video. He ran every customer call. He was the business. So the first question that he had to ask himself was, when I sell this business, am I willing to stick around? Do I want to be part of this business after the transaction? His answer was no, as you now know, because he went off and founded acquisition.com. If we had sold the business, if we sold Gym Launch with Alex involved in everything, it probably would never have sold. It took us almost 18 months to extract Alex out of the core of the business, and then it was worth $75 million. So how do you take a business that is arguably unsellable? And here's I said the contentious part. Your business right now chances are is unsellable. You might believe it's sellable, but it's not. Because if you haven't gone through a process and know 100% why it is sellable, it is probably not in a condition where anybody will buy it. And when I say anybody will buy it for meaningful dollars. Liquidation value, which is what most people get, is a whole nother thing, but that's not the wealth generating thing that you actually are here for. So there's a process. That's the first. The second thing is, I would ask you, why are you selling the business? It's generally an organizational issue. You're burnt out or you're lacking confidence, something happened. That's why I actually get involved with a lot of businesses, because they're actually really good and they actually shouldn't be sold. They should actually be the platform for us to go out and buy other businesses. So here's the part I would have you think about. If you're thinking about selling, ask yourself this question. What would need to be true for me to go out and buy other businesses that I can bolt on to this existing one that I have? Do the thought exercise. So I'll give you an example. If you own a uh, roofing company and you're like, I want to sell my company, what would need to be true for you to go out and acquire other roofing businesses? Or what other businesses are there? There's electrical, there's plumbing, HVAC, there's lawn care, there's pool services. You can bolt on a lot of home services to a roofing company. So you go, what would need to be true? Oh my gosh, I would have to stop working 18 hours a day. I'd have to stop being the only one. I would actually need a team. Write all of those things down. Because here's the reality, in my opinion. Now you have all the problems you need to solve, and they're actually a heck of a lot easier to solve than trying to sell your business for an ungodly amount of money that it's probably not worth. It's who you need to know, not what you need to know. And you might have to open up your mind to involving other people. But this is why I get involved with service business owners primarily, is because I believe they are the lifeblood of the economy. They are the lifeblood of kind of what actually makes the world go round. And so I'm actually more so looking at it as, how can we become an acquisition machine? Because that's the path to get to where you want to go, the generational wealth and all of that kind of stuff. You just don't know how to do it yet. So
Are
you need
you,
someone who can tell you how to do it.
do you go to Berkshire?
I have never been, but I'm very familiar. I mean, I've read every letter probably for the last however many years, a couple of decades.
Are we going to get you there?
Maybe, maybe it's it is an area of focus for me right now, and probably will be for the next decade.
Those that are listening that are very deeply interested in connecting with you on a deeper
Yeah,
level, what are you what makes, I'm thinking of like the season of no. What makes them a fit? What the alignment, right? Alignment's so
yeah,
important. Your four page
yeah,
Declaration of Independence. I mean,
yeah,
so like we're speaking to those potential partners.
yeah,
Who are they? What are they? What do they do? What do they not do?
yeah.
What area of focus?
Yeah. So I focus primarily on service businesses, B2B and B2C, that either have or want to have some kind of recurring revenue component. So a subscription, a membership, anything like that. And if you think your business can't have one, I will challenge you that you absolutely can. We built an HVAC business to have a $250,000 recurring revenue component just on a monthly fee for access to a technician. So we've also done it we did it with a mattress store under Gym Launch. We Everybody can have a recurring and should have a recurring revenue component. Those are the kind of business metrics. Um, Generally under $5 million a year in revenue, generally north of startup. So you have to kind of already be in business. That's the sweet spot for me. The way that I work with folks is I take everything in the growth sector. So you keep everything you've already created. We split economics on everything above where you are right now. So I believe in alignment, which is, if I'm not actually delivering real value, you shouldn't pay me. So if anything I've said resonated, you get to keep everything you've already built. We go build something bigger. You have to be coachable. You have to believe in the future can be brighter than the past, and you have to believe that the hustle and grind culture is absolute BS, and that you actually have to have a heart and a soul, because I actually do deeply care about you as an individual, and you have to have a really strong why. Like, why does this actually matter to you? Because it's going to be painful at points, and I want to make sure that you've got the mental fortitude alongside to see it through.
What is for those that are not clear, ARR?
Oh, annual recurring revenue or monthly recurring revenue, something like that. ARR or MRR. That's what that means. Monthly recurring revenue or annual recurring revenue.
What are some things people can do to start moving in that direction if they're thinking, "Oh, I never had that idea in mind."
Yeah. Um, tell you how to get in contact with me. When you DM me, just remind me, just write product in your message, and I'll send you I have a whole framework and training on exactly how to do this. Very basically, there's 6 types of products and services. You just have to figure out what that means for you, and I'll walk you through the whole thing.
What's the fastest way to contact you for our listeners to get that
Yeah.
information?
Yeah. So if you go to Instagram, just DM me uh, culture. And then after you culture, if what I just said resonates, just send me. Can you send me the product framework, and I'll send it over to you as a listener. So DM me Tim.Calise is my handle on Instagram. DM me culture, and then I'll know you came from this show.
Final question, this is a time of uncertainty and curiosity. Even today, when we're recording this, this will be out in a few
Yeah,
days. There's just some macro uh, things happening in our
yeah,
culture. What of the entrepreneurs you're working with that are successful, what are they doing to stay focused and create value and success that our listeners can leverage?
yeah. Yeah, it comes back to what they call the locus of control. Like you can only control the things you can control. And so often we look at what's happening around us and it takes our focus away from actually being a driver of our business. Whatever happens today around some of the macro things happening here in the US, the sun will still come up tomorrow. Buyers will still need to buy. Sellers will need to sell. So focus on the things that you can actually control. I believe in personal agency first and foremost. So you're in control of your own destiny, regardless of the wrapper that happens around it. I think you have an opportunity to win if you embrace it and actually live up to that expectation.
Tim, thanks so much for doing this. I challenge all you listeners, follow Tim Calise on Instagram like I do. Connect with him. Make sure you say culture at what was
Yeah.
that again?
Yeah, it's Tim.Calise. So Tim.Calise. Just DM me culture. So I know you listen to this show. And then if you want that product formula, just DM me product. And after that, and then I'll know to send it over to you.
Thank you all for listening. Please leave us a review in the Culture Matters podcast, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much, my friend.